Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out. Today I want to talk to you about something that I really care about, and that's KPIs. I know a lot of people have probably used them, and a lot of people probably hate them, especially in engineering. But I want to give you 3 ways that you can make your KPIs not suck. So, who am I? So, my name's Jeremy, and I'm currently building a platform called AllStacks. The reason I bring that up is because I've actually seen almost 1,000 teams build and use KPIs at this point. And I want to share with you some of my learnings. So, who here uses KPIs? Oh, sorry. Yeah, so who here uses KPIs? Who loves their KPIs? A few people. Okay, that's good. That's awesome. I want to talk to you, for those that don't, I want to talk to you about 3 key things that you can use to build better KPIs. And I'm going to do this in the form of anti-patterns. And at the end of this talk, I hope you can take these away and apply these to your teams. So the first anti-pattern is your KPIs are actually focusing on activity instead of outcomes. And this is really common when you're asked to build KPIs for your team for the sake of building KPIs. And a lot of people start that way. Manager comes in and says, hey, we need to be more data-driven. Can you actually come up with a couple of KPIs for your team? And a lot of people start with what they do during their day-to-day. And that ends up being misaligned to the outcomes of your team a lot of times. So making sure that you actually focus on what your team is responsible for leads you to building better KPIs. So if you pick things that are outcomes-based, you end up focusing on things that your team accomplishes instead of what your team does. And you often avoid the trap that activity-based KPIs end up always pushing your team to do more without really having a destination of when you've done enough. Activity KPIs can also force you to not align your KPIs to your business goals. You should be able to track your KPIs all the way back to things that your CEO cares about. If you have conversations like this, you may realize that you're somewhat misaligned. And the unsaid thing that we actually see when we go into a lot of our clients actually is something like this. We find that the CEO cares about the outcomes for the business, but there's a disconnect. So for us as leaders, picking the right KPIs can actually help bridge this gap. So the second thing, a lot of teams end up cargo culting their KPIs. If you're not familiar with that term, I usually see it in agile software development, where you bring in agile practices for the sake of doing the practices, but not really understanding why you're doing them. And that happens in KPIs too. So if you bring in a set of KPIs or a set of metrics, you can just be doing them for the sake of having KPIs. And that leads to some pretty bad behaviors. This usually happens with a lot of popular frameworks. Things like the DevOps metrics are really popular these days, and a lot of people, sometimes even press from senior leadership, bring them in and say, let's implement these 4 metrics. And everyone's like, okay, we'll do that. But you don't really believe in them. So you end up doing the metrics, building a bunch of dashboards, and not really improving your team. You should actually instead make sure when you pull in KPIs or metrics that you believe in them as a leader, that they'll help your team. So you can deconstruct these frameworks and find the KPIs that matter to you. And that's what everyone should be doing when they're actually picking these KPIs for their teams. So the last anti-pattern here is using metrics and KPIs for evil. And a lot of times when people actually learn that your team is implementing KPIs or some way to measure your team, the first reaction is almost always fear. And that's what, rightfully so. When you start bringing in performance management, a lot of people can start getting concerned for their jobs or worrying that they're not actually being productive or something's wrong with the business. But KPIs should actually be a compass. They should really help your team understand where your North Star is, what you're trying to accomplish, similar to anti-pattern 1. They should be goals-based and outcomes-based. And if you end up using your KPIs in a way that incentivizes people to game them, you're doing it wrong. So people shouldn't feel the need to game the metrics to protect themselves. They should feel aligned and invested in what the KPIs are that you pick so that you build a better organization. So thanks for coming out. Check me out here, and go build some great KPIs.